Queen Cleopatra VII, known as Cleopatra, is the last king of the Macedonian family, who ruled Egypt from the death of Alexander the Great in 323 BC, until the occupation of Egypt by Rome in 30 BC. Cleopatra was the daughter of Ptolemy XII. She succeeded him as queen in 51 BC, sharing the throne with her brother Ptolemy XIII. It was described as beautiful and charming. Contrary to what is highlighted by the pictures that arrived to us. As for the men who have fallen in love with her, she has been captivated by her strong personality, wit. She was constantly in conflict with her brother, who ended up expelling her from Egypt. The country was at that time a kingdom under Roman protection, and the main source of wheat for the Roman people. And Caesar came to Egypt after the defeat of Bombay in Pharsalus in 48 BC, and he found the civil war still going on. And Cleopatra was trying to return to Egypt, so she suddenly appeared before Caesar wrapped in a rug, as they claim, so that she could plead with him to help her achieve her goal of returning to power. And his family, either with her charms, or with the clear logic that she will be a better ruler than her brother. Caesar helped her defeat Ptolemy, who was drowned at the end of the battle. And Cleopatra ruled for a few years. In the year 40 BC, her kingdom was part of the share of the imperial who afflicted Marcus Antonius when it divided the Roman world with both Octavian and Lepidus after the slaughter of Julius Caesar. Marcus Antonius loved Cleopatra, and his affair cost him losing his favor in Rome. Antony ended up committing suicide after the defeat that Octavius had inflicted on him in the Battle of Actium in 31 BC. When Cleopatra heard the news, she also committed suicide. What history confirms to us about Cleopatra as one of the great queens of Egypt, whatever the differences were about her relationship with the policies of the Roman Empire, for she was, for example, the only one among the Ptolemaic dynasty that took it upon herself to learn the Egyptian language at the time, and imitated the goddess Isis and claimed that she embodies her life on earth. She even called herself the new Isis, which reflects the extent of her political intelligence and her seriousness in successfully ruling Egypt. Cleopatra was a gifted queen. She spoke several languages, led armies at the age of 21, and was educated in the beacon of knowledge of her time, Alexandria. She worked to restore the glories of her ruling family, and was able to establish stability and peace in the country during her rule, and to combat corruption. And she was also witness to open grain stores for her people during the period of famines, and to raise taxes on them. Egypt was at that time a prosperous country, under the rule of a queen who did not see the people in her race as a defect. Cleopatra and Julius Caesar. Sculpture of Queen Cleopatra and her son Caesarion in the Temple of Dendera. Historians say that both Cleopatra and Caesar sought to use the other, so Caesar sought money to pay off the debts he incurred from Cleopatra's father Auletes, in order to retain the throne. While Cleopatra was intent on retaining her throne, if possible, restore the glories of the early Ptolemies and restore as much of their power as possible, which included Syria, Palestine and Cyprus, and strengthened the bonds of their relationship, and after his departure, he gave birth to a child named Ptolemy Caesar or Ptolemy XV, and the Alexandrians called him the diminutive Caesarion, forming an army and confronting her brother King Ptolemy XIII fell under the influence of his advisors, who worked to deport Cleopatra and expel her from Alexandria to seize power. She sought refuge in eastern Egypt and was able to recruit an army from the Bedouins to regain her position. Upon her arrival at Brundusium, Nauport said, where her brother's army was confronting her, the ship of the Roman commander Pompeius arrived after his defeat in the Battle of Versailles 48 BC. So what was the king's guardians except that they orchestrated his death, and presented his head to the victorious commander Julius Caesar, who arrived in Alexandria on October 2, 48 BC. Cleopatra succeeded in penetrating the ranks of her opponents after her brother Ptolemy XIII tried to get closer to Caesar, where he found an opportunity to declare his full loyalty, and worked as much of his energy to flatter him and draw close to him, and by doing so, he hoped that he would gain the support of the Romans to single out the offer of Egypt. However, it became clear to Ptolemy that he had made a mistake in his calculations. Caesar summoned Ptolemy and Cleopatra to Alexandria, and declared his support for the monarchy. During that time, the people of Alexandria had another queen on their minds. In November 48 BC, with Caesar and Cleopatra imprisoned in the royal palace, the Alexandrian people declared the younger royal sister, Arsinoe, Queen of Egypt. Cleopatra and Julius Caesar spent a long winter locked up in the palace of Alexandria. Roman reinforcements did not come until March 47 BC, when Julius and Cleopatra became political and loving allies. Upon the liberation of Caesar, Ptolemy XIII escaped and drowned in the Nile, while Arsinoe IV, the queen who ruled and lived for a short period of time, was captured and taken to Rome. Cleopatra, who had become a widow, was restored to her throne with full Roman support, and she married her brother Ptolemy XIV, who was 11 years old at the time. The bride got pregnant. In June 47 BC, Cleopatra gave birth to a son, whom she named Ptolemy Caesar, who was known as Caesarion after his father. As for Caesar, who was originally married to a Roman wife, he was unable to officially recognize his Egyptian son. But before he was killed, he sought to pass legislation in Rome that would give him the right to marry a second wife and grant legal legitimacy to a child born in foreign lands. The relationship between Caesar and Cleopatra was far from just a passionate, impulsive. Both were veteran politicians, and neither side could be considered naive. Their physical unity strengthened their political alliance and had an exemplary political connotation. Egypt would have remained independent, except that it fell under the protection of Rome. Rome would benefit from the generosity of Egypt,